extreme thank you to all the Dirtomaniacs that support the show. If you want to get ad-free content and extra free content, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and support us. The proceeds go to editing the show, upgrading equipment, and helping us travel to events. What it do? Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, are you ready to talk about Duskmourn?
Dude, not only am I ready to talk about Duskmourn, I'm ready to find the room that I can unlock that lets me manipulate the top of my library.
There are probably some rooms like that. I don't remember off the top of my head.
There are no rooms like that, Zach.
There are no rooms. Okay.
No rooms. Well, I've been evicted.
You have been evicted. You've been locked out. So let's start by talking about the Overlord cycle, because you mentioned a pretty interesting point. I didn't initially have them on my radar. Go ahead.
So I don't think that any of the Overlords, like I would be surprised if they do make it. However, there are two Overlords in particular that I think are interesting for one deck in Legacy. They are Overlord of the Baelmerk, which is the black one, and the Overlord of the Hauntwoods, which is the green one. The black one has 1 and a black for impending 5, and when it enters or attacks, you mill 4 cards, and then you may return a non-avatar creature card or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. And the Overlord of the Hauntwoods, which is the green one, has impending for 1 green. Impending is just a suspend variant where they're enchantments on the battlefield, but they don't become creatures until they no longer are impending. Overlord of the Hauntwoods says, when it enters or attacks, create a tapped colorless land token named Everywhere that is every basic land type. Yeah. Now, both of these creatures are 5-drops, 3 black, and 3 green, which means that for their impending cost, when you cast them, it will trigger up the Beanstalk. So there's something to be said there. And also, as a man who has cast many a LeyLine binding in your day, Zach, Overlord of the Hauntwoods not only triggers your up the Beanstalk, but it also produces a land that gives you full domain for your LeyLine bindings.
And for Draco.
Because that Everywhere is every basic land type, which means that it will serve the need for every basic land type to be on your side of the field to make your cost reducers cost reduced. Yeah. So those are the two that I think, give it a shot. You up the Beanstalk players, give them a go. You Sultai Bean Boys, give it a try.
Sultai Bean Boys. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy, and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned. Give it a go. Sounds vaguely like right-wing, like some kind of a weird dog whistle for soy boys.
If I could put all of the hard writers into the Duskmourn household to be haunted forever, I would.
I would love that. All right, well, now on to the actual cards that may or may not see play. I have to say that there are a couple gems here, but less than I would have thought. I walked into this set very hyped for the flavor, and was hoping to see something that would not burn down the meta per se, but that would be playable. There are a couple role players here, but nothing that I'm like, oh, this is going to be the thing that breaks the bank. You got to get this, There are a couple cards though. So let's start with Abhorrent Oculus, which is a 3 mana that's 2 and a blue eye creature. As initial cost to cast this spell, exile 6 cards from your graveyard. It has flying. It is a 5/5, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, manifest Dread.
For those who don't know yet, Manifest Dread is you get to surveil the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them to your graveyard, and one onto the battlefield as a 2/2 creature. That if it's a creature, you can turn face up anytime for its mana cost. The longer I sit with this one, the higher I am on it, Zach.
Oh yeah,
I'm higher on
maybe
it.
Stifle Knot or something might want this?
I don't know, man. I think that just it's 2 and a blue for a 5/5 that you pass the turn, and then you make another 2/2 with selection. Right?
Yeah, you're just getting 7 power on the board for 3 mana.
I'm sorry. What I just said for Manifest Dread is I said that you surveil 2. You do not. You look at the top 2. You put one into your graveyard and the other onto the battlefield.
It is not surveil.
Yeah, you're not surveilling. You're not setting up the top of your deck with Manifest Dread. So just to clarify that. But this card I mean, you have to exile the 6 cards. Okay, sure, fine, cool, fine. But once you do, it's 3 mana for 7 power across 2 bodies that'll draw a card another body onto the board every time. In addition to filling your graveyard for additional copies of itself, filling your graveyard with any other value that you might have. I just think that at 2 and a blue, all right, like this seems to just be a really hard rate. Now, don't get me wrong, a 3-drop is going to get dazed into oblivion. This thing with Red Blast on the rise is going to get Red Blasted, but a 5/5 flyer ain't no thing to scoff at. And I just think that if you play around the removal when it first comes down and pass the turn, you get the 2/2. It can clear chafe off the top of your library if you've set up your library in some capacity. So the selection there is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, the notion that like these days we get 1 mana 6/7s, so like being able to just manifest cards off your deck also seems totally fine. I think that this card has been sort of secondary to Murktide in all of the discussion that I've heard, including probably when we talked about it. We were like, you're never playing this unless you have Murktide number 5 in your deck.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that like perhaps there's a world where you're not playing just instants and sorceries and whatnot to boost your Murktide. 6 is not the steepest of things to fill your yard and get a flyer that's going to produce a bunch of bodies, and it goes wide on its own. I don't know. I'm higher on it than I was before with more time.
Yeah. Also, for the times that there is a ground creature. Also, but beyond the fact that like, okay, this has this can just block something into oblivion, if it's a ground creature. Something important to point out, right, is that if you manifest Dread another Abhorrent Oculus, I think it just costs 3. You don't have to exile anything, right?
What do you mean?
And so let's say one of the creatures that you manifest Dread.
Oh yeah, you just turn it face up.
Yeah, you just pay 3 and turn it face up, so you don't have to pay the extra mana for the next Abhorrent Oculus. If you end up manifesting that.
Yeah,
just something to think about.
I think that I don't know if anybody who has actually speculated on this card has actually tried to cast it like in a practice game. Just give it a try. But just sitting around, if your opponent doesn't remove it immediately, just drawing a 2/2 every turn, that ain't nothing in a world where like we're individual thick creatures just beating each other up.
Yeah.
This flies. I don't know. I'm higher on it than I was before. If it doesn't see any play, I won't be surprised. If it actually shows up, I'm no longer going to be surprised. It's also a dumb fuck creature type. And you know how good dumb fuck creature types are at showing up in Eternal formats.
Yep. All right. So next up is Walk-in Closet / Forgotten Cellar. Walk-in Closet is, so this is a room card. And I think it might be the only room that's worth playing. Walk-in Closet is Crucible of Worlds for 2 and a green. You may play lands from your graveyard. But if you unlock it, or if you just pay 5, right, you get Yawgmoth's Will.
Yeah, I agree that we have seen... I don't know the world where this sees play, because the only deck that's playing Yawgmoth's Will right now is Beseech Storm decks.
Yeah.
This is Yawg's Will for 5 mana. So is there a world where a combo deck would be interested in 5 mana for a Yawg Will? Because a Yawg Will a Yawg Will deck. I can't talk these days, but let's clip that. Let's clip that one and post it everywhere. So a Yawg Will deck is not going to play it and then not kill you, right?
Yeah.
So if you are sitting down at a tournament with your Yawg Will deck, you're ending the game on the spot.
Yeah.
So
just it's an effect that we don't see very often. And I feel like the Beseech decks, you have what, Gaia's Will. You have access to Gaia's Will if you want to be that person for that deck. So it is an effect that does exist in the format already. But it is worth noting that they're few and far between, and this can be like cast from your hand too.
I'm curious if the lands decks would just be interested in having this over their Crucible of Worlds slot, if that ever shows up. Just because, granted, like this is the same mana cost for the same effect. It's 2 and a green instead of just 3 colorless. but then just having access to a Yogg will, I mean, it might be incidental, but obviously like having a card tacked onto your Crucible of Worlds seems just more or less an upgrade, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, next is Volgavoth Terror Eater. For 9 mana, you get a 9/9 flying lifelink creature with ward, sacrifice 3 creatures.
3 non-land permanents.
Sorry, 3 non-land permanents. I meant to say that. If you didn't if a card you didn't control will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than its mana cost. So here's the thing. Very few times am I going to say this might be a card you want in Reanimator with the plethora of great reanimation targets out there. But in a world we live in right now where most of the time the best way to get rid of a reanimation target is with either, as Phil once said, shit pile of white cards, or with a Brazen Borrower to bounce it. This is going to be hard to bounce.
Yeah, I think just to clarify, for simplicity's sake, whenever a card is put into your opponent's graveyard from anywhere, milled, played, whatever, Valgavoth is going to exile it.
Yeah,
and then you can do whatever by Bolus of Citadeling out of exile, and it's a flying lifelinker that is a 9/9. I agree with you, Zach. I don't know if this is good enough to replace Atraxa, just because Atraxa just draws cards that also obsoletes your opponent. Yeah, it obsoletes your opponent's next plays, and this thing doesn't affect the board. But it is a lot stickier. So I could see it as maybe something that you would pivot for a certain metagame. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing an uptick in the Jeskai Walker's control deck, and maybe
can't chase this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Valgavoth is just going to be better than Archon of Cruelty, since Archon does affect the board and also hits for 9. But the fact that it ETBs, replaces itself, and then also affects the board, where this will just sit and play and be sticky. I just don't know if stickiness is the need for the Reanimator decks. I mean, you just ran yourself to a 9th place finish with Froginator. Like, I mean, did you ever feel like you ever needed just a threat that never left? It more or less, I imagine, when you reanimated your target, they
generally when you reanimate your target, game over. But if you're in the mirror, this card's amazing in the mirror, because generally your opponent has a follow-up play of like, oh, I'll Brazen Borrow that back into your hand. In this case, it's very hard to do that. This card is kind of like, that's it. You're not, the game is going to be over if you can't deal with this. And there's not a lot your opponent can do. And they can't even, like after the fact be like, oh, well, I'll just Entomb reanimate my guy because it all goes to exile, right? Like, so it might be a mirror breaker kind of card. Something also worth noting, 9/9, larger than a 7/7, of course, but also if you have to animate dead this thing, which is one way to get off the board, your opponent can Brazen Bar the animate dead, right? But an 8/8 is still the same clock as a 9/9. Like that's 1, 2, 3, your opponent's dead. Chances are they're probably below 16 anyhow, just based on like fetch landing. And, maybe they reanimated something and you said no, like there's a whole, force of wills and stuff like that. This could be a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, one thing to note for when you said that a 9/9 is bigger than a 7/7, I mean, if we're in that world, their 7/7 reloaded their hand with all of it just tutored their library for a bunch. Death Touch, but also Vigilance. So being able to both attack and defend, where this can only attack.
Exactly.
So I think Valgavoth might just be on the cusp of the out, like just on the outs, because Archon effects. And I mean, I think if it sees play, I won't be surprised. Like it clearly is at a power level that would make sense to put it in play, and then it's sticky, and then it's a one-sided Leyline of the Void. Like that's nothing to scoff at either. Like you said, you're playing the mirror. If you put this in a play, your opponents can't reanimate it, their shit anymore, because this is just going to exile everything if anything touches their yard. So reading this as Valgavoth, flying, lifelink, ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents, Leyline of the Void. during your turn, Bolus' Citadel your opponent's cards from exile. Like
Yeah.
those are powerful words on a card.
Ridiculous.
So,
yeah.
So I mean, maybe there's a metagame where if we are so inbred on Blue-Black Reanimator that this then becomes a target of choice, because putting this into play,
getting this out first just ends the game. Yeah,
it actually just ends it. Doesn't pitch to anything like Atraxa does, but neither does Archon of Cruelty. But like maybe there's a world where we pivot away from Archon of Cruelty because we're so inundated in the mirror and play this instead, and then your opponents actually are lights out. So this is still going to do the same work against Eldrazi and the dumb fuck decks anyway. So
yeah. All right. Hauntwoods Shrieker is a 2 green and colorless for a Beast Mutant 3/3. It says whenever it attacks, manifest dread. And then you can pay 1 and a green to reveal a target face down permanent. If it's a creature card, you can turn it face up.
You think that? I don't think so. Your 3 mana 3/3 that requires another mana to, like, it's got to rumble, it's got to attack to get the 2/2.
Yeah.
As a 3/3, it's not going to tangle with anything reasonable in this format.
I'm just looking at this as like a can green get Stifle Knot going? You know,
no,
like this
no.
is
Why would you? Why, Zach? No, nope.
Fine.
Hauntwood Shrieker is get it out of here.
Hauntwood Shrieker is out. All right. So next up we have near and dear to my heart a LeyLine. I'm gonna find it here. LeyLine of Resonance. LeyLine of Resonance. Where are you at? There it is. LeyLine of Resonance. It would cost 2 red and 2 colorless, but of course it's a LeyLine, so if it's in your opening hand, you can just put it on the battlefield. And it says, whenever a instant or sorcery spell targets only a single creature you control, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. I am only thinking about this for Infect as like an interesting card that maybe you like decide you want to like be the most, the most combo-y Infect deck. And that's where it starts and stops for me.
I don't even know what that deck would look like, Zach, but I
neither.
hope you played against me so that I could finally beat an Infect pilot.
Yeah.
I think the cool thing about LeyLine of Resonance, it's not going to see any play because it's too swingy. There's no way to like consistently do your thing unless you're playing some sort of, heroic style combo deck, which just doesn't exist outside of exactly Infect. And Infect isn't going to play it because why would they? But the cool thing that's somewhat compelling about this thing is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that puts that targets only a single creature you control, there's got to be some cards that are like, if you like, you can target your creature and then you can target your opponent's creature for some kind of value. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some type of combo. But also, now that I'm saying this out loud, I think this thing just sucks and isn't going to see any play, so we can move on.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that is fair. Razorkin Needlehead is 2 red for a human assassin creature, 2/2. It has first strike during your turn. Whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. Is this going to replace Orcish Bowmasters? Of course not. Is this going to be played in any deck that plays red mana currently? No. Could it in the future? Maybe.
I don't see why not. I mean, a red ain't great. Like, you don't want to cast your shit for red. Like, that's not a good mana cost. But I mean, whenever your opponent draws a card, Razorkin deals 1 damage to them. Like, the deal 1 damage, as a la Orcish Bowmaster is showing. Like, don't get me wrong, Orcish Bowmaster is a better card. It can deal with problems on the board. It has flash and also puts a thick fatty while also doing this and can point damage wherever. Like, this is probably what Orcish Bowmaster should have looked like.
Yeah.
As black. As long as it's your turn, Orcish Bowmaster has Death Touch or some shit, and whenever your opponent draws a card, deal damage to them. Like, this is probably what Orcish Bowmaster at home should have been, as opposed to the thing that is horrendous that we have now.
Orcish Bowmasters at home. Woof.
So, but like at the same time though, like, I don't know. Let's say you're still trying to do your blue-red Delver type stuff. Like, we've seen how punishing it can be to have the effect of every time your opponent draws a card, deal a damage, and this also hits them in their draw step. So, like that, the effect is not nothing. And if anything, I think that Razorkin Needlehead is more likely to see play than any of the cards that we've talked about so far.
I will co-sign that. All right. Silent Hallkeeper for 1 and a blue is an enchantment creature horror that is a 1/1. It can't be blocked. When it deals combat damage to a player, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, draw a card, it becomes a copy of another target creature you control. Man, Phil, I just read the that hasn't been chosen part, and I rescind everything that I wanted to talk about with this card.
I don't know. I don't think it's all that bad. I mean, you can choose one that hasn't been chosen if the Silent Hallkeeper becomes a copy of another target creature you control. If you don't have that another creature, then it can't become a copy of anything else.
Sure.
So if you think to yourself, okay, it's a 2-mana 1/1 that can't be blocked, it will draw a card if it hits, and then it will grow and become a 3/3, and then that 3/3 can't be blocked. I mean, we're probably too slow in this format, but if everybody is right that Frog is only going to last until December, then I don't know. Maybe people are interested. I don't know.
In the meantime, copy your Frog.
Yeah, just copy the Frog.
All right, Demonic Counsel. We talked about this card already.
Wow.
You can find that card in a link above me somewhere. We went on about that for long enough. So the next card I think we can talk about is Come Back Wrong. Come Back Wrong is go on.
My homeboy. So we're going down Mythic Spoiler, and these are the cards that we've pulled out. And my homeboy Zac over here is like, let's talk about LeyLine of Resonance, just so I can give a nod to Infect, and wants to completely skip over Marina Vendral's Grimoire.
Whoa,
I mean, you're Marina Vendral's Grimoire.
Oh, okay. This 6-mana legendary artifact. Yeah, go ahead.
You just want to skip over it as though us blue players that draw cards don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't read this card because it said 6 mana. So tell me about this card.
It does say 6 mana, and it is never going to be cast, but it does say it's 5 and a blue. When this card enters, if you cast it, draw 5 cards. 5 cards, Zac.
Okay.
5 delicious cards.
Not for nothing, Phil, but this could actually see play in that, what's it called? The Covetous Jewel deck, right?
Yeah, it almost certainly could. You have no maximum hand size, and you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. We like those things. Okay. We like a Lich. We like a Lich effect. It's blue Lich. Okay.
I feel like that's a card. That's another effect that deck wants, because then you don't lose to Orcish Bowmaster.
You don't lose to Orcish Bowmaster, and you don't lose to your own ring trigger. That's also sweet.
Yeah.
Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Wow. Whenever you gain life, you just draw cards. For every life you gained, you're just going to draw some more cards. Whenever you lose life, discard that many cards. And then if you have no cards in your hand, you lose the game.
Okay. So in a scenario where you are that blue Covetous Jewel deck, right? This is fine because all you really want to do is cycle through your deck to find the cards you want, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, you're not worried about, I took damage, I had to draw cards and discard cards. All you're doing is cycling through your deck to try and find the cards that will, end the game for you, right? So if you lose 1 or 2 cards on a draw, you're not too worried about it.
There was, in that that Jewel deck, I mean, there have been variations that do play Aetherflux Reservoir to dome your opponent, so you're just gaining life. So every time you cast a spell, you're just going to gain more and more life and draw more cards.
Oh, wow. There you go.
In that sort of position, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you have a bunch of tutors, and this is blue, so it's part of all your pitch stuff, and blue count is always going to be difficult in those types of decks. But you assemble those 2 cards, and then you just draw your library. So that's pretty sweet, and you have no maximum hand size, and you can just start doming things. I don't know. I think that this is close. It's a sweet combo card. You're playing all the Ancient Tomb style effects, and this only requires 1 blue mana. So casting it seems a whole hell of a lot more reasonable. On you get to 3, you go turn 1, Grim Monolith, turn 2, play a blue source, cast this thing.
Yeah.
Right. That sequence doesn't seem totally absurd, right? You're playing 4 Grim Monolith, and you're playing a bunch of Ancient Tombs. It's you literally went, okay, turn 1, play my one of my 4 ofs. Turn 2, play a colored source, and then play this thing, draw 5 cards. Go now we're off to the races, right? Now we're just fucking loaded. So one thing to point out, it says whenever you lose life, discard that many cards. So it will remain to be seen how punishing that is with Ancient Tomb, because Ancient Tomb is loss of life, so you do have to discard 2 cards when you do it. I imagine though that you will draw so many cards in that deck with this card in it that won't be too much of a hurdle. But
yeah, it's 2 life. It's not like you're going to play like 4 of them, right? In the same turn,
The idea that you could go Ancient Tomb, Grim Monolith, turn to Ancient Tomb, play colored, or not just play a colored source. You have Island, Ancient Tomb, Grim Monolith, cast this thing, 5 cards, go.
Boom. Yeah.
Like you now have, a fully stocked hand and are very much well ahead. And I don't imagine your opponent ever gets to do anything.
And let's keep in mind that you can get rid of this with what's called Transmute Artifact, right? Like there's just so many ways to deal with this, because this doesn't like you don't lose the game if this goes away. So like, yeah, there's a lot to be said about this card, a lot more than I thought there would be.
A lot more to be said, and also the rate on which you draw cards with this card, like it's 6 mana, but drawing 5 cards, just like historically, that's an insanely good rate.
That's a ridiculous amount. Yeah,
it's a ridiculous rate, and it's also a single blue. If this were a double blue, I don't think it sees play. But on single blue, which means that it's good with all of your ancient and soul lands, I'm high on it. All
right. Little card I'm a little less high on, but I think might see some fringe play is Come Back Wrong. It is 2 and a black.
My boy wants to talk about Come Back Wrong again, but he just wants to skip over Head Shredder. This is the bit, Zach. Every time you want to go to Come Back Wrong, we're going to come back wrong and go to other cards.
Head Shredder. Okay. Head Shredder is 2 green and 2 colorless for an artifact vehicle. Whenever attacks, you may mill 2 cards. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from play, put them onto the battlefield. Tapped, crew 1. It's a 5/5. Talk to me, Phil.
Dude, so this is the combo with Hedron Crab, my guy. You have a Hedron Crab, you have this in play, and you start milling cards, and every time 1 or more lands are put into the graveyard, you put it into play, and then that will trigger the Hedron Crab, and then you flip more cards, and then you put those lands into play, and then you just flip your whole deck.
All you need to do...
This is cephalid breakfast, my guy.
All you need to do is have that
brunch.
Hedron Crab have 1 power to crew this thing.
You don't even need to crew it. It doesn't need to be a creature.
I know.
This is just an artifact. And it's just cephalid breakfast.
Well, that's a cool little. I dig that. It's basically just there's a Lauren. That's it's 4 mana. It's a Lauren, right?
It's 4 mana and it's in Nadu colors.
It is in Nadu colors,
dude. You can win. Any game can be won if Nadu's in your deck. You put Nadu, and then you'll win games because it's there, and then this is also there, and that's fine. And then you'll have other cards that are there, and you have Nadu.
All right. Come Back Wrong.
Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Come Back Wrong is a sorcery for 2 and a black. Destroy target creature. If a creature is put into a graveyard this way, return it to the battlefield under your control, sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. This is just like, if it was a sorcery, I'd be way more high on it. But this is a way to like get rid of your opponent's reanimation target.
If it was an instant.
Yeah,
it is a sorcery.
Sorry, if it was an instant. If it wasn't a sorcery is, I think, what I meant to say. But anyhow, this it can get rid of any creature, right? Destroy target creature. And then, if you happen to get rid of an Archon or so, you can swing the board a little bit. It's not amazing. Don't play 4 of these in your deck. Maybe it's a sideboard card. But nothing I'm super high on. Next card is Cathartic Parting, and this is a card I feel like Phil will actually kind of be into. Target owner of the owner of target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls shuffles it into their library. Then you may shuffle 4 cards from your graveyard into your library. It's Gaia's Cradle or Gaia's Blessing.
I just don't understand why we can't have any good effect like this in blue or white. Just
instant speed.
Just stop making me have to dip into other colors for these recyclable type cards. Like historically, that is in blue too, but the only reasonable ones are in green, and none of the ones in green are even reasonable.
Yeah,
I don't understand why this has to be a sorcery as a sorcery disenchant. Like, I just don't understand why that is. Like, it's not like you're messing up you can't mess up your opponent's graveyard. So being at instant speed, it's not like it's graveyard hate. Like,
I think I have an answer for that, Phil. The
Pray
answer is so that you don't have some. So there's probably, because there's that crab, the scrabbling skull crab, and that I bet like Mill is like a limited environment like deck archetype, right? And so if it's instant speed and you get 2 of these, that deck archetype just can't win.
Oh no!
If you like draft 2 of these,
Oh no!
because you can do it at instant speed.
Oh no! Not if you have 2 of these, you hose an arc. Oh no! You drafted 2 of these. You somehow wasted 2 picks drafting this, and oh,
yep. So I think
no.
that's the thought there. I'm not condoning that as a reason. I'm just saying that's probably the reason.
It sure is a thought that happened there.
Yeah. All right. Manifest. Sorry. What is this? Altanak the Thrice Called. Altanak the Thrice Called is a 7 mana 9/9 with trample. Whenever Altanak the Thrice Called becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, draw a card. Discard Altanak the Thrice Called. Return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Phil, there's like I forget the name of the card, but there's a card that if you cast it 3 times, or if you cycle it 3 times, this card just comes back into play.
Yeah, that card is it's the Beetlejuice nod, and it is called Say Its Name.
Yeah,
say its name. If you here's how this will work, right?
Yeah.
If you're playing this card, if you think this card is worth playing, you're not playing it with Say Its Name. If you would like to know what Say Its Name does, it says mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Exile this card and 2 other cards, name Say Its Name from your graveyard, search your graveyard hand library for a card named Altanak the Thrice Called, and put it onto the battlefield. And then you shuffle. And you can only activate that that effect as a sorcery. So You're not playing 2 mana sorcery, that effect. You're just ain't doing it. If you're playing Altanak, if you're like, I need to feel something in my life, and I'm over these other fatties that just make games play out exactly the same way every time, and you want to play some Altanak, you're going to play it similar to how you would play your Troll of Khazad-dûm, where this thing entombs itself, lets you pick up a land, and then you just use any of your reanimation effects to reanimate it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it. That's as far as this card goes. And then, people can still target it, and they will, and then you'll draw a card, and that'll be fine. But it won't take the place of any of the other reanimation targets.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
we were just talking about Valgavoth.
It is a cool nod to Beetlejuice. Who doesn't love a cool nod to Beetlejuice?
Yeah. So did you not think that Beetlejuice was spelled Betel Geuse, like it's spelled in the newspaper in the movie?
Spelled like the star.
Yeah, but like the movie itself is like the word beetle and the word juice, like that you drink.
I realize that, but I'm telling you that I'm very aware.
Yeah, you're more aware than most.
Yeah.
But why is it not Geuse when that's what's used in the newspaper in the movie, Zach?
I don't know, man. I have no idea.
Zach, you're the only person that can answer this question. The minds of eternal girdles want to know.
The answer is the mind rot of the like 80s Valley Girl culture is the reason why Beetlejuice is spelled the way it is in the movie.
So what's the remedy for this situation, Zach?
Watch Valley Girl with Nicolas Cage.
That's it. You heard it here first. Watch Valley Girl, and then you know
the tagline for Valley Girl?
Pray tell.
She's from the Valley. He's not. She's cool. He's cool. She's hot.
Perfect movie synopsis.
It's a great, yeah. And there's like a 5-minute scene where the Plimsolls are playing in the bar in the background. Great 80s band, by the way. If you don't know the Plimsolls, look them up. Best advice I can give anybody. This set review, it pales in comparison to just checking out the Plimsolls anywhere at once. A Million Miles, any of those songs. But they're playing in the background of the movie for like 5 songs. They're just like going through a set list in a bar while they're hanging out in the bar.
Zach, speaking of set lists in a bar, tell me why Enter the Enigma isn't good enough for Infect.
Enter the Enigma. What does that do?
It's blue it's a sorcery for blue, and it says target creature can't be blocked this turn, draw a card.
there's already several versions of this sort of thing. I think
But this
there's
one
a
draws a card, Zach.
slip through space does the same thing, and it's colorless technically.
But this one
so
draws
you
a card.
can. Yeah, so does slip through space.
Slip through space draws a card.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up. We're gonna test Zach's knowledge here on slip through space. We're looking at. We found it. Slip through space. Blue, devoid. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card. So it turns out that Zach remembered this card, and it's exactly identical except this one, but it has devoid. But Zach, you want your blue cards for your Force of Will.
You do need to be able to pitch cards to Force of Will. There is another card that has rebound that I think is probably more relevant, and it gives it +1/+0. I forget
this
what
one draws a card, Zach.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like rebound or draws a card. I think I would, in most cases, I would rather have an unblockable creature, and in fact, than I would rather have a random card, right? Like that effect is going to be almost always good for you as a infect player.
Zach, think about how you're going to make your creature unblockable and then draw the second pump spell and then just kill your opponent.
Think about how almost every one of your creatures is unblockable in infect.
Is it? I don't know. You're playing a 1/1 for 1.
You have
that can very much be blocked.
A Inkmoth Nexus, which is flying, right? You have a what's called the Blinkmoth Agent. Why do I not know the name of this card?
Blighted Agent, my guy. Blighted Agent.
Blight Agent, which is unblockable, right? So 2/3 of your creatures are unblockable to begin with, or close enough to it that it's probably relevant. This card just doesn't do anything. If you're playing Modern Infect, this card might be useful.
Wow. I think we spent more time on Enter the Enigma than any other card. And it's interesting that you were like, yeah, LeyLine of Resonance, how about an Infect? Am I right? And I'm over here being like, I don't know.
Look,
this blue card, you're right.
Fork is fork.
You're totally right. It won't be able to. That's great. Moving on to
Manifest Dread.
You want to talk about Manifest Dread? Why? Just because it is named what it does?
Yeah, that's part of it. Again, this was the like, hey, Hauntwoods Shrieker might be good in Stifle Knot. Manifest Dread might be good in Stifle Knot if you decide to go green. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
You really want Green Dreadnought to be to. You're just man. It's time. It's time for Green Dreadnought. It's not. But
play your illusionary masks in Green Dreadnought.
I like that you want to believe. You know what? We all need to be more like you and believe in something.
Yeah, and I'm not going to play it. I'm just saying you could. So the next card is Kato, Bane of Nightmares. We have talked about that in that same episode that we talked about Demonic Counsel. So you can see our thoughts about that there. It is the only Planeswalker in the set. Let's talk about Ghost Vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Ghost Vacuum is a 1-mana artifact that reads, tap to exile a card from a graveyard, and then 6, sacrifice Ghost Vacuum, put each card exiled with Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types, activated only as a sorcery. Phil, the only reason I even mentioned this card is obviously it's a 1-mana artifact, so Saga, right? And then on top of that, it's a card that your opponent, if they're on Reanimator, I feel like they just kind of have to deal with. If you're a Saga deck, there's a good chance you're playing enough mana acceleration that you might be able to get this to 6 and blow it up and get like 2 or 3 creatures off it.
Dude, Unlicensed Hearse is one of the...
For sure.
Well, Unlicensed Hearse costs twice the amount of mana, and it does remove twice the number of cards per activation, and can, if you are playing some creatures, get in for a big swing. But
now,
but as a historically powerful graveyard hate card, Unlicensed Hearse is up there is among the best because it sees a ton of play. And this is the first time that exile target card from a graveyard on a 1-mana artifact has just ever existed. And yeah, of course this is going to see play. I mean, it's going to see play as a freebie because Urza Saga exists. Yeah. But like even outside of that, I mean, this is, I think, going to be one of just like Yeah, the reasonable all-time great graveyard hate cards, because you play it on one, and then you just get to check your opponent's graveyard for the rest of the game. And then if you ever stall out, incidentally, you get to make however many 1/1s you make.
Yeah, and like imagine you took your opponent's Atraxa. Now you get to draw 4 cards. You know, like I put a Archon into play off that. Yeah, I have a 1/1, but you took 3. You discard a card. You lost a creature. You know, every time this thing attacks, it's doing 3 damage. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that this is one of those cards that I think is probably one of the better choices from the set.
Yeah, this is like one of those cards where it's, it's not like, oh wow, sweet, fuck yeah, like new, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, this is just an upgraded version of something that's never existed at this rate before, and it'll obviously play because incidental graveyard hate is always good, and it happens to have like maybe a win condition attached to it if you go late. Cool.
Marvin Murderous Mimic is 2 mana for a legendary artifact creature toy. Marvin Murderous Mimic has all activated abilities of creatures you control that don't have the same name as this creature. It's a 2/2. I only mention this for 2 reasons. One, it's a 2 mana artifact. You can slam it off of a Ancient Tomb for sure. I just, in my head, I read a card like this and I'm like, it probably goes infinite with something.
Oh, it goes infinite with plenty of things. The problem is that in order to go infinite with whatever those things are, you need multiple things on your board.
True.
And, you're not doing that in Legacy.
I'm not trying to, no. But,
well, I mean, this is sweet. It's just,
Even if you're just like, hey, I'll slam this as a one of in my Nadu deck, and it's another core, whatever, I don't think that actually does anything.
But it's not, though, because that creature would already also be on the table.
Already on the board. Yeah, it's not only is it already on the board, you're not like locked into like only using that ability once. Anyhow, it's just a card to think about. I'm sure that there's something that I'm not thinking about where it goes infinite as a 2-card combo. All right, final card from the main set. Oh, go on.
No, you good. Go ahead.
Final card from the main set. Valgavoth Lair, an enchantment land with hexproof. When it enters battlefield, choose a color. It enters tapped. Add a color of that chosen color to your mana pool to tap it. So only reason I even talk about this card is as like a weird hedge against like a lands deck that's playing like, Ghost Quarter or something like that. A hexproof land that like is whatever color you want. It's just an interesting thing that we haven't seen. It's also an enchantment, which I don't know. Maybe that's relevant to somebody.
It's so interesting the way that you're looking at this card and the way that I'm looking at this card. I'm like, the only reason this card is relevant is because it's an enchantment land. You know that in the history of this nerd card game that we play, in all of its time, in its 31 years, do you know how many enchantment lands outside of Valgavoth's Lair exist?
No, I don't.
One. Exactly one. And it's Urza Saga.
It's Urza Saga. Yeah, okay. I was like, I know this. I know the answer to this. I just can't think of it.
So if there was a world where you were, you're like, I'm trying to play with some amount of enchantment lands. Now you have access to 8 enchantment lands that you've never had before. The only reason that this card is even remotely powerful or interesting whatsoever is that it has an enchantment attached to it. So if you need, for whatever reason, an enchantment that costs 0 mana, do you know how many 0 mana enchantments exist in the game, Zach?
No idea.
Let's do the quick search because I'm pretty sure it's exactly 2, and it's Urza Saga and now this.
Okay.
We're looking. We're confirming. Guess what? The only 2 0 mana enchantments in the game are Urza Saga and Valgavoth's Lair.
Okay.
That is unique and in a space that we have never been able to explore before. And if anything was going to get your brewing brewskis, your brewery brewskis brewing, then that's what it's going to be.
All right. Well, Phil, we talked about into the EDH decks, and we talked about your take on the Miracles EDH deck, but it's the only one that I would say is a buy because it has both of the cards that I think are worth picking up from this set. Ancient Cellar Spawn. Ancient Cellar Spawn is 1 and 2 black for a 3/3. Each spell you cast is a demon, horror, or nightmare, costs 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast that spell was less than its mana cost, target opponent loses life equal to the difference. Let's talk about Sign of Draco. Let's talk about every pitch spell there ever was.
Cool.
That's all I'm saying. Here's a 3 mana 3/3. No one's playing Lightning Bolt anymore. You know? This card might be good in truth. Just as like a weird like value, like, oh, I guess I'll just like play this guy and chill. Oh, are you gonna cast a spell? Dome you for 5 off of my Force of Will.
Yeah, it's finally a card where you want to play Misdirection, so you can actually get enough stuff out of this. The thing is, it's 3 mana, Zach. It's 3 mana.
Yes. Now,
I mean, 3 mana.
I'm not saying just play this with Force of Will. I think you need to have other payoffs. Sign of Draco, a classic example of another payoff. Also, 2 black is a lot of black mana to deal with, so there's that too.
Yeah, and I know that people shared this to me, and they were like, "Phil, you can play your miracles and dome your opponent." And I was like, "We've lost the thread."
Yeah. If you are terminusing, and doming your opponent for 6, and then shuffling this under your deck, you've definitely lost the plot.
You dome them for 5 because that's the difference of mana that you spent versus what it costs.
Oh yeah, good call.
But that means that you spent 1 black, white to deal 5 damage, and 2 cards.
Yeah. No thanks. All right, and then the last card that I found that maybe we'll see play, and I'm not high on it, is Metamorphosis Fanatic. We've talked about it a little bit on one of our extra shows. It is a 6 mana human cleric, 4/4 lifelink. When this enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield with a lifelink counter on it, and it has Miracle of 1 and a black. I don't think that this is the card that you want to throw into your deck just yet, but it might be a sideboard card for after playing this weekend. Might be a sideboard card for the Froginator deck.
Yeah, everybody thinks this card's getting banned, so
it's true.
Everybody thinks it but me, and I'm never right. So
yeah,
I guess
apparently it's getting banned.
You can play this card until December when it gets banned.
So with that said, I don't know, Phil, did you see any other cards that you were like, ooh, this is it, I gotta talk about this?
Yes, we need to talk about keys. We got to talk about Keys to the House.
Master of Keys? Keys to the House?
No, Keys to the House. It's a 1 mana artifact that you can find off your Urza Saga, and so you can play all of your room cards. It says 3 tap, sacrifice Keys to the House, lock or unlock a door of a room you control, activate only as a sorcerer. So you want to play your rooms? If you want to play rooms, you got to be an Urza Saga deck, as is the case for everything. Zach, are we getting to when are we at the point where everybody just understands that every deck should just be an Urza Saga deck?
We're coming to that point soon, I think.
Just every deck would be made better if you just played Urza Saga.
I mean, that's how Mishra's factory worked back in the day.
Yeah, I think we are there. We're just like, we refuse to accept. We're like, oh no, there's a certain class of decks that are Urza Saga decks, and I'm just thinking that.
You know what I hate about Keys to the House, Phil?
What do you hate about it, Zach?
That you have to sacrifice it. You should not have to sacrifice the keys to lock her on. That is not how keys work.
Dude, how many times have you opened the door and then forgot the keys in the lock when you went in the house, and then they're just sitting there in the lock?
This is my problem with The Legend of Zelda. Like, why does my key just destroy itself when I go through a door? Makes no sense.
So now let's start this episode. That was all preamble. This episode's really about Zach's qualms with Zelda
with key functions in video games. It really bothers me that you would just have to find another key that is a skeleton key to any key in a dungeon, right? Like it opens any key in the any lock in the dungeon, right? Then it disappears after you use it.
The name of this episode is the lack of logic. The lack of logic for keys.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
The key. Yeah,
Phil, what's the last horror movie that you've watched?
The last horror movie that I watched was, I don't know. I was with a group of people that just had friends on, and
Friends counts. Was it the Hootie the Blowfish episode?
I mean, Friends was pretty scary because, what's his face overdosed and, died in a jacuzzi or whatever. And then you rewatch the episodes and you're like, oh, that guy's
not alive anymore.
He's not alive. So it's scary.
Yeah. I agree. I watched Poltergeist 3 last night.
Poltergeist 3, does that also have a subplot about weird logic with keys?
Almost. It takes place in a building as opposed to a house. But fun fact about that episode. Quick aside about the Poltergeist series. So Poltergeist, the first movie. Two things about the first movie. Maybe I'm repeating myself here. Stop me if I'm repeating myself. Two things about the first movie. There were 3 children in the first movie. Right after the first movie, like before the movie even came out, the oldest daughter was murdered by her real life boyfriend. Just dead. Like killed in real life. Right? Also there's a scene, there's sort of a second act to the movie where like they think they've gotten rid of the poltergeist and then it comes back and the mom is in the backyard and she's like swimming in the swimming pool, right? Or she's not swimming in the swimming pool. She fell off the roof and there's a ditch that they were building the swimming pool in. Of course, like, the poltergeist comes back and all these zombies, skeletons and stuff come out of the pool and like get at her. And all of those skeletons are real skeletons, Phil. They're real. They were once human bodies.
That sounds pretty scary, Zach.
Dude, they didn't tell the actress either. They were just like, these are real human bodies. Like they told her afterwards, basically, because you know what? The reality was it was cheaper to get cadavers than it was to get to like make them.
And that's why we need Medicare for all, Zach.
For all. And so anyhow, in the second movie, famously, my babysitter told me that if I dreamt about that movie 3 times, I would die. I have not slept twice since that movie came out in 1988, as you can tell. But the third movie, the little girl, who was the little girl in the first movie, little girl in the second movie, little girl in the third movie, she died during filming because they thought she had like Crohn's disease, but she just had a bowel obstruction and died in like real life. Again, like another person, like so many people in this movie died in real life. Like the guy who was the villain in the second movie was supposed to come back. He died in real life. Just like, man. Whew. Also, in the third movie, Stacy from Wayne's World plays the like teenage daughter. The like psycho hose beast. If it's a severed head, I'm going to be very upset. Like that Stacy, the ex-girlfriend of Wayne. Anyhow, I'm going on about horror movies. We're getting into spooky season. If you have enjoyed this video, please do the things that you got to do, and we will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.